Well, hi again. I'm Brian Geary. I'm the Director of Communications for Pearson College, UWC. And today it's my pleasure to be speaking with the new Executive Director of the United World College National Committee of Canada, Luisa Vasquez. Luisa, good to see you again. We're recording this interview right almost at the beginning of applications for Canadians to become part of the United World College movement. So on campus, on the virtual campus, and soon on the real campus, many of our students have arrived at Pearson. I'm sure the same thing is happening in other UWCs around the world. So what kind of things are keeping you busy right now in your role?
Yes, I will start with an acknowledgement that the UWC Canada, the National Committee, our office is in the Sianu First Nations, and currently I'm working at the Suk First Nations territory, and this is where my home is, as you can see. And this is where I'm based right now. And what's keeping me the most busy these days, well, I wear several hats. I mean, as part of the National Committee and my work here. And the most urgent thing right now is making sure that families and students have all the supports they need to be able to get to the UWC that they are going to be part of or are part of right now. And other than that, we just ramped up our recruitment. And so we opened up our applications on the 15th of this month and are closing them on the 15th of November. And after those applications close, we have the selection committees. And so I'm trying to touch base with all the selection committees to make sure that all the systems are in place for those processes.
I can vouch for the knowledge that it is a very wide-ranging and demanding job that you do, Luisa.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about selection committees, and we're going to talk about the role of volunteers in the National Committee of Canada as well in a minute. But just by way of introduction, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you because you've worked at Pearson College in a couple of different roles, and if I'm not mistaken, it's in some high-profile and very relevant areas, such as alumni relations. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so when I first started at Pearson College, I was working in alumni engagement. And since that time, I had another role and then went back to alumni engagement. And the relevance in my experience at Pearson is that I did a lot of volunteer management and trying to engage alum to volunteer for Pearson or connect them with the national committees. And so a lot of that volunteer management is experience that is good for me right now. But also because of the times that we had to do student engagement and student programming, I was very keen to take over this new responsibility to help with a new system that was helping recruit new students and bring students into the UWC system.
Was that relevancy to your previous career part of the reason that you were interested in the National Committee of Canada job?
Yes, my first career out of college, I was working for UBC Okanagan, and I was a residence life manager there. And I was responsible for a lot of programming and all the orientation process and all the hiring of students that worked in the residence buildings. And that kind of post-secondary field was always very appealing to me, and trying to see how we would get students to a campus, but also how to keep them in a campus and how to keep them engaged and keep them learning. And all these systems have always been something that I'm passionate about. And so right now, my main focus is to have systems in place and help those systems to recruit students. And I hope that as our scope grows, that we will have more engagement and also that we will have maybe more with summer programs and things like that in the future.
Now, our audience for these kinds of broadcasts are usually very well informed about UWC and national committees in general. But just remind us very briefly, what is the role of the National Committee of Canada? And what is the role of national committees throughout the world? And I believe there's about 160 national committees around the world now.
Correct. So we have 160 national committees, and their main job is to recruit students and select them and send them to UWC schools. There's 18 schools, and so they are responsible for doing these processes. All of them do it differently. Some national committees are a staff solely organization, other ones are volunteer and a staff mix, kind of like the National Committee of Canada. And other national committees are just volunteer run only. Some are very small and only select one student per year, and other ones select multiple students per year like we do at the National Committee. So it's a very diverse world. But what sets us apart from the other national committees is that besides recruiting Canadian students, we also accept students that are not allowed to apply through their national committee, or students that are living in regions or countries that don't have national committees. So I'll give you a couple examples. There was a student from Spain last year that was an international student in Canada, and that student could not apply through the Spanish National Committee because he was not living in Spain. And so the National Committee of Canada processed his application and then recommended that student for a UWC spot. And we've also had students that come from countries where there's no national committees, and we process them. And also, if they're successful in our application system, then we recommend them to go to a UWC.
I know from past years there have been several outstanding young people who have gone through that type of process who have benefited enormously because they've come from very unprivileged backgrounds, shall we say.
Yes.
Yeah. I know that I've worked with a number of people connected with the National Committee. I've written about the National Committee, and as you said, volunteers are very, very important to this. I call them the fuel that the National Committee runs on.
Of course, it is.
Can you tell us a little bit about the role of volunteers and some of the volunteers that you work with?
So I'll sort of run maybe from the grassroots all the way up to the tree. So at the very grassroots, we have all the different chapters. So what that means, we have a chapter for each province and territory in Canada, in addition to a virtual chapter, which conducts interviews for people that are not living in Canada, like some of the ones I mentioned before. And all those people usually have volunteers that will do some recruitment or put out social media posts or go to schools and talk to people. In this day and age, they will probably have Zoom conversation with classes and schools instead of going to meet people. There's volunteers that are more focused on the reviewing applications, in doing interviews and recommending students for succeeding in the UWC process. So that is the core volunteer group. And then we have also volunteers. All our board is volunteer based, and there are different committees within our board. And in addition to those board members being part of those committees, they also recruit volunteers to help with those different committees. And so we have 3 layers of volunteering opportunities with the NCC, and we always keep looking and trying to find ways to enhance our operations. So if there's a volunteer that comes with a unique idea, I'm always happy to connect with them and see ways in which we can get things rolling.
The best ideas can come from the most unknown places, can't they?
All the time.
You may not be able to actually answer this, Luisa, but is the Canadian structure somewhat unique in having provincial and territorial subcommittee, or not subcommittees, but committees feeding into the National Committee as well?
I can't answer that question specifically, but I think what sets us apart, besides having that system, is that we also have a school within our territory, like the Pearson College. And the way in which we were established was unique in comparison to other national committees. I believe that the scope of our recruitment is big because we try and have more representation of Canadian students at Pearson College. And so we have more work to do. And we're always trying to send Canadians abroad and have Canadian representation also abroad. But as I also said, we also have other non-Canadian applicants. So it's kind of a flexible organization.
Well, the scope of or the number of Canadians that are selected for UWC schools is probably very, very large in comparison to many other countries. And this past year for 2021, about how many, do you recall about how many Canadians are going to UWC schools?
I think I'm about close to 90, if not a little bit above. I mean, people's circumstances keep changing on a daily basis, but I think that I'm at 90 right now.
It's a very unusual year, so no one can blame anyone's circumstances for changing.
Yeah.
Now, there was you're relatively new in this position. I guess you've only been in place for maybe less than a couple of months or so.
It's been like 8 weeks or something.
8 weeks, but you've been fully immersed in the UWC world and movement for a couple of years now. What are some of your key goals for your first year in this new position as executive director?
Yeah, I think my key goal is to provide support for both our students and our volunteers, and to make sure that I am a good listener and get to understand what their challenges are and see ways in which the national committee can help support them. I'm also very keen in learning success stories and learning more about people. And I think my main goal this year is to make sure that we have a good recruitment process in place, that we are flexible enough to adjust to COVID-19 and the challenges it brings. But also I have a board that is one of the main purposes for me to be here. So I need to support them and make sure that they have everything they need to keep the NCC running. And we're trying to establish a fundraising campaign. And so with that, it comes the challenges of hiring someone and getting someone in place so that we can start fundraising to be able to support student scholarships. We found throughout the years that there's not enough scholarships in the system for our students, and so it's a challenge for us to try and find ways in which we can start getting some funds for those scholarships.
That's an ever-present treadmill, and we're all running on, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Let's go back to something that should be top of mind, I guess, for you and the board and all of the volunteers with the National Committee. For example, recruitment. You mentioned the applications opened at the 15th of August, and normally they close in mid-November as well. So what happens during this fairly intense period of encouraging applications and building awareness of the UWC movement?
Yes, so we have, as I mentioned, some of our chapters have some initiatives that they would put in place to help spread the word. We also have recent graduates or second year students that have gone through a full year of a UWC education, and they will start to share their experiences with their peers and trying to see people that they think would succeed in a UWC environment. We also have the alumni network, and we will encourage them to let others know about their applications being open. But we have a recruitment and partnership committee as part of our board, and there's a large group of volunteers that's behind our promotions. And so they are responsible for making sure that all of our social media is in line and that everything that is out there in the forefront of our movement is reflecting who we are and the kind of candidate that we want to attract.
a big job to say the least. So are you directly involved in creating social media and posting social media messages as well?
Yes, I am, and I also work with volunteers to help me translate things into French, as I'm not French speaking, so that we have a large French speaking population in Canada, and also I work with the communications team from Pearson College, such as yourself and Nicola Mende, to try and do some cross posts and try and make sure that we're both promoting a UWC experience. And we have a professional company that we hired to help us with some of those social media posts, but we also have an alum from Pearson College that's doing all the creative material for us. So it's a big operation. It's a big focus for us to try and get the word out there about us.
And once again, the importance of alumni in putting forward their initiatives on this as well. Right? I know that you're very busy, Luisa, and we only have a limited amount of time. You've been very generous already. Is there anything else that we haven't touched upon? Is there anything else you'd like to remind us of in terms of the National Committee of Canada?
And just, I want to thank people for listening in, and I want people to touch base with me if you're listening to this and you think that you want to volunteer some of your time, or you have some ideas or feedback for me. You can reach me at nationalcommittee@pearsoncollege.ca. You can also look at our website, is www.ca.uwc.org. Our application is available there. So this is a great place to send people to. And I just want to thank everyone for listening. And thank you, Brian, for taking the time to do this.
Oh, my pleasure. And thanks, Luisa. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and a pleasure to see you virtually. I'm looking forward to seeing you again in person at Pearson at some point in the future.
Yes, that would be great, wouldn't it?
All right. Thanks again, Luisa. We'll talk to you again. Okay. Bye-bye.